The moment that people hear that you're engaged and you're about to get married, everyone around you wants to throw so much advice in your direction to prep you for marriage. People get married from different sources. My husband and I got that from church. We did premarital counseling, and then we had a man and woman of God that helped us through that journey before we got married. And then we also had friends and people around us who loved and cared for us. We had parents throwing advice in our direction as well. So in this video, I'll just be sharing with you the best pieces of advice from a whole list. It won't be exhaustive, but I'll just share a few that I think were really, really standing out for me and my husband. So if you want to listen to that, keep watching. The first thing is that there is life after the ceremony. I feel like so many times, guys, people put so much effort in having this big wedding, wanting to invite so many people for the purpose of it being a status thing, but forgetting that there's actually life after the wedding. You have bills to pay, you have yourselves to take care of. There's so much that's happening. Now imagine you're so concentrated on having such a big wedding, you get loans and you have to pay for those after you get married, inclusive of all the bills that you have. That is such a headache my husband and I did not want to go through at all. And honestly, one of the things that I really took was what one of my closest friends in Gambo, what her mom had said at some point was that a marriage wedding, or the wedding itself is not an emergency. It's something that you know that we want to get married in 1 year, in 2 years, or whatever. You can plan for it, and planning for it includes planning for the finances for that wedding. So it's really, really not an emergency, and I feel like that was such a great piece of advice that we received, and because of that, we were able to have few people at our wedding. We didn't have so many people. It was just a beautiful gathering of close friends and family, and I really loved it that way. So that's one of the pieces of advice that I received that I think was really, really amazing. The second one is work on your finances together. Guys, there's so much to be said about finances, especially when you get married. I came from a place where I was super independent, lived alone for a very long time, got used to handling my finances on my own, and now I get married and I have to handle my finances with somebody else. It wasn't the easiest thing, but the best piece of advice that I received working on finances together, it has saved us so many times. And sometimes we hear things like, especially women, especially ladies, guys, sometimes we say the money I earn is my money and the money you earn as my husband is our money. I honestly don't like that saying because I feel like it defeats the purpose of partnership. But again, there's scenarios when maybe the husband is making way more money than you as the wife, and maybe you have a sit down and he says, hey, I think the money you get, it's fine, you can keep that money, use that for the things that you want to buy for yourself and whatever, and I think my salary is enough to cater for everything else in the house. That becomes an agreement that is totally different. But when it's imposed and you just say, well, I'm just going to use this money for myself and your money is for the whole household, I think that's a little bit selfish. But I really got that advice and ran with it to say that work on finances together. We actually realized the places and parts of finances that we're both good at, and we shared responsibilities equally. And it made life so much easier. I didn't know I would get to that place, but it made life so much easier, and I'm so grateful that I got that piece of advice. So the other thing that was really, really helpful for us is with regards to roles and responsibilities, that these should be based on strengths and weaknesses. Now, we all come from different places, different cultures, and a lot of our beliefs are informed by what we have heard and what we have seen. But I remember someone, especially during that was premarital counseling, and I also was told by somebody else that you always have to consider what your weaknesses and your strengths are. If you want to work as a team, if you have a project as a team, for example, one of the things you will want to do first is realize or kind of pull out people's strengths and people's weaknesses so that you can share responsibilities and roles properly just so you can thrive as a team. But why is it that when it comes to marriage, roles and responsibilities, people want to just shove them on people, even though people may not be the best at them? I honestly think that it has everything to do with the people in that marriage sitting together and saying, hey, okay, so this is what needs to be done. Let's look at what comes naturally to you, what's easier for you. And I always think about it this way, guys. If my husband was a chef and I am not the best at cooking, for example, right? And he wants to cook every day, he enjoys it, he just wants me to have, like, mouth-watering meals every single day. Why on earth would I deny myself that chance to have that good food every day? I don't understand. And because I'm a woman, does that mean that even in that scenario, I just have to take up everything that I need to do in the kitchen, and just because I'm a woman, I'm going to do all that? I honestly don't think so. I think that you have to agree as husband and wife. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? And sometimes you have roles and responsibilities that are a little difficult for both of you. Then a lot of compromise has to be made. You have to, there's a lot of times you're going to have to do things that you don't like to do, but it has to be done. So it has a lot to do with sitting down and talking to your husband, talking to your wife about it. So that's a really good piece of advice that I had received. Another one is praying together, not just for each other, but praying together. I have learned the importance of this recently, actually. It's something that my husband and I started doing. When we find time, we sit down and pray together. If there's a pressing matter or if something has happened and it's bothering, we sit down and pray together. Even when things are okay, we just sit down and pray together. And honestly, it's very easy, especially in the beginning, to just say, oh, our lives are busy. You are working, I'm doing this. We don't have time to sit down and pray. But honestly, it's one of the most important and beautiful things you can ever do, especially when you are married. And we have seen the goodness of God, guys, like just praying for things and seeing God come through in our lives. It's been such a beautiful thing. And it's something that I don't think I will ever regret. That's something I'm grateful for. Everybody that told us that, you were right. Another thing that I was told, that I heard, actually, not that I was told, I remember someone saying marriage is not 50-50. It's not a 50-50 thing. It's both of you striving every single day to give the other person 100%. And I grew up knowing it's a 50-50 thing. I give my 50, you give your 50. Same thing in friendships. I give my 50, you give your 50. That's what I grew up thinking. But honestly, I have seen what it means to say, I strive to give my 100 and my husband strives to give his 100, because the seasons, we go through so many different experiences. I will be going through so much and he will be going through so much, because it's life. There's so many experiences that will come our way. But sometimes it may be difficult for me to give 100, and God, it helps so much that my husband is able to give his 100 in that moment. And just because I'm probably able to give like a 60-70%, he then shouldn't come to me and say, oh, because you're giving that, I will only give that. You know what I mean? So I have come to learn that it's not a 50-50 thing. It's me striving to give 100, and it's also my husband striving to give 100. That has really helped us so many times. I don't know what number we're on, but we'll just keep going. So I think I have 2 more to go. The other one is learning to communicate. Guys, it's life-saving. It's a beautiful thing to learn how to communicate. I was not the best when it comes to communicating with my husband, and I am still learning. I think we are still learning. We're still on that journey, learning how to communicate. But one of the things that I took away, especially when it came to premarital, when we're learning, was that we are a team. So when we have a disagreement, it's not us fighting and as individuals selfishly looking for that victory, that I won the argument or you won the argument. It's about, look, this is a partnership. There's something that's between us that's maybe not working. What then works for our marriage? Because that's the direction we're supposed to take. And it's not every single time that what works for your marriage is what you want. It's not every single time, and I've had to come to terms with that. And with doing that every single time, we are learning how to communicate, how to bring up issues that may be bothering us. And oh my goodness, the growth that happens when you actually want to learn to communicate. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's another piece of advice that I would say, guys. Learn to communicate. Learn to communicate. The last one I wanted to share with you guys is talk about intimacy in marriage, guys. Talk about it. It's really, really important. A lot of the times when we are being taught, especially when we talk about traditional lessons, there's this narrative that, especially when it comes down to sex, intimacy is a whole big thing, but when it comes down to sex, there's a lot that is said that makes you feel like sex is about pleasing the husband, but there's very little room, or there's very little that is said about it being pleasurable for the woman. And I don't like that narrative. And I honestly think that two people have to come and discover what that looks like for them when it comes to sex and when it comes to intimacy. What does that look like for you? You have to communicate. What do you want to do? What do you want to try? What don't you feel comfortable with? All those things are really important. And I think that's why it's really important for you to understand at the same time that when you come together in a marriage, it's a partnership. So even when it comes to intimacy, it's not about serving one person. It's about both of you, again, striving to serve each other, because it's important that both of you are pleased. And there's various forms of intimacy. Research on that, find ways to make each other happy. And yeah, I think it's really important to talk about that. So that's what I wanted to share. The list is long. This was not exhaustive, but this is all I wanted to share. And I hope that if you're about to walk down the aisle, I hope you have amazing people speaking into your lives. I hope you have people that are knowledgeable, people that are of sound mind speaking into your lives. So yeah, have a great week and be kind to yourself. See you in the next video.